Hi, everyone. Welcome to episode 321 of our Tick Bootcamp podcast. The title of today's interview is Sculpting Recovery, an interview with Flora Deborah. Flora was born in France, grew up in Italy, and has now been living in Tel Aviv, Israel, where doctors flat out deny the existence of Lyme disease. Flora was told all of her symptoms were in her head, it was all psychosomatic, and there was nothing wrong with her. But she refused to accept this diagnosis and left the country to seek specialists to eventually diagnose her with Lyme disease, Babesia, Mycoplasma, and EBV. She went from being extremely sick to being this vibrant, energetic, glowing, happy individual we saw here today on this podcast interview. We're really excited to share with you exactly what Flora did to regain her health and how she got to the point where she is today. So without further ado, Flora Deborah in Sculpting Recovery.
Hey, Flora, and welcome to the Tick Bootcamp podcast.
Hi, hello. Very nice to be with you today.
It's really nice for us to meet you as well. And I think you're our first Middle Eastern guest. So that's really exciting for us. And I think for our listeners, it's always, always sad, but always interesting to know that, there are no geographical limitations to Lyme disease. And although we're going to talk a little bit about this, but there do not appear to be any geographical limitations to you in your life. You've lived all over the place. So why don't we talk about where you settled now first so that, folks can get a sense of where you are. And then we'll talk a little bit more about your world travels.
So at the moment, I'm in Tel Aviv. I've been living here for the past 6 years, I think. Yes, maybe nearly 7. And I was actually born in France, in Evian, the mountains next to Switzerland, where there are the water. Yes. And I moved to Milan, to Italy, when I was 3 years old with my family. So I grew up and did all my schooling in Italy, and moved to the UK when I was 24, I think. And I lived in London for about 7 years. And and then I moved to Tel Aviv.
So right now you've created FOMO for all of our listeners. You live in almost every beautiful major city in the world. So
Please don't.
Let's start now. So you're currently living in Israel, in Tel Aviv.
Yes, I am.
So talk to us about Israel and what it's like to live in Israel, and what do you do professionally in Israel today?
Sure. So I'm an artist. I came here 2016, and I've done my master here, my MSA in Bezalel Academy, and I made lots of good friends. Our community here is very alive and much smaller compared to the one in London, and I really, really enjoy that. I feel like people are kind of helping each other and are very open-minded. And I met my partner here, and then one thing, take the other, and I stayed.
All right. So Israel was the place where you completed your education.
Yes.
It was a place where you met your partner, and it was a place where you fell in love with the city and all that was offered in the city, and that's why you're currently living in Israel.
Yeah.
So let's go back to the beginning. Let's talk about your time in France. So you were born in France, and you were there just for a short time. So I'm assuming your parents met and lived in France, and you were born there, and you lived there for a couple of years.
Yes, they actually met in Kibbutz Baran, so in Israel. My dad is from Paris, and my mom grew up in Milan, but she was born in Turkey. And then they moved to Montpellier. They moved to France, and then to Evian. And then I was born there, but we just stayed there briefly, just for a couple of years. And then because my mom's family was in Milan, they decided to join them and to move.
Okay, so you now move to Italy, and you said your educational, at least your primary education, was in Italy from when you first started going to school until your undergraduate or your university studies. Did you study in Italy for your initial university studies?
Yes. So I did my first. I did my 3 years in Italy, and then I moved to London to do a postgraduate. But all my schooling was before that was done in Italy.
Okay. So let's talk about your education first. I'm interested in two different elements of your education. Of course, you've always had artistic aptitude, and we're going to talk a little bit more about that. But let me talk about during your primary education. I'd like you to share with us whether or not you believe that you were given enough information during your primary education to be competently capable of interfacing with medical professionals, meaning were you medically literate? And I don't just mean in terms of health, but in terms of using the medical system if you were to get sick. And the second area of inquiry is I'm wondering whether or not you knew anything about ticks or tick diseases from your primary education.
Yeah, we'll start with the second question first because it's a very quick answer, and the answer is I had no idea that Lyme existed. I had no idea what a tick was. No one ever told me that. And I used to horse ride during the summer and in France, and no one ever talked about that ever. So no. And in terms of medical system, my mom and dad took me to homeopathic doctors when I was a kid. So I was always, say, acquainted to a more holistic way of healing the body, while also going to my GP. So I think I had some tools, maybe not enough, but I did have some idea that there are different ways to heal, I think.
Okay. So let's talk about your childhood activities. We know that you've had artistic aptitude from your childhood. So talk to us about how that was fostered in your family and through the educational system. How did you know that art was your thing?
I did and I didn't. So I was, I guess, making all the time, drawing, filming, doing stop motion in my bedroom, all kind of activities by myself. I was really, I guess, good at entertaining myself. I was an only child, but I was never bored. But I think the Italian school system does not help artists, I guess, to understand their way. I went to a scientific high school. I never had a drawing class. So kind of have to be a bit from me, like trying to fight against all the ways in which I was pointed out at, I think. So,
so you weren't getting your artistic enrichment in school. You said you were largely in this scientific school with a very sort of traditional approach to education. Did you find, as someone with an artistic mindset and aptitude, that at times you felt like you were not just not receiving enrichment, but you were different than your?
Absolutely. Yes, I had in high school especially, I had a hard time. It was a very competitive high school, and lots of science, lots of math, lots of languages, Latin. It was not easy for me. Like. I mean, I was okay, but I was never the best in any of the classes. And that changes once I switched to art, and I felt like I found myself, and most of all, I found my people.
So you found yourself and your people. So do you believe, again, just let's say focus on your primary education. Did you feel that your teachers didn't understand you? They didn't understand how you thought. They didn't understand how you learned. They just didn't understand Flora?
Not much. No, I think it was very tailored. The education was very tailored for different kind of minds, which was not mine.
Now, I understand during your primary education, you were not only doing a lot of artwork, and I'm assuming you were in nature, trying to get inspiration from nature while you were engaging in your artistic pursuits. But I also understand that you were an athlete. So were you engaging in any outdoor activities, either in the pursuit of your artistic talents, or either training or playing games in the outdoors when you were pursuing your athletic pursuits?
Mostly in the summer. So in the summer, I was horse riding. In the winter, I was a figure skater for many years. So that was mostly indoor, and I guess quite safe from that point of view, because it's basically inside a fridge. So, But yeah, in the summer I was in the countryside and outside all the time.
Right, so let's focus on your equestrian pursuits, your horseback riding, right? That was what you were doing. You were doing that during the summers. Did you ever find ticks on the horses that you were riding or you were caring for? And did you ever find any ticks crawling on you when you were engaging in your equestrian activities?
Not as far as I know, because I was not literate about it. I had no idea what it was. So maybe I thought it was a mosquito or something like that. And I was 10 and no one ever talked to me like, look out for ticks. So not that I remember.
Okay. So you now go to university, you now find your people, because you now pivot over from this very traditional scientific and mathematic based education system to where you're now receiving the artistic enrichment that you were craving during the early part of your life. Talk to us about how things changed when you went to university and how that helped you to discover your purpose.
Sure. I think the big switch came when I moved to London, where I continued my education. And that's when I allowed myself to study art, because before that I studied sociology. So I didn't really fully allow myself to do what I felt I wanted to do. And that's where I suddenly like acquired confidence, and I felt at ease in class. I felt I was good at something. I felt lots of good things, I think.
All right, so talk to us about London and what that experience was like, meaning you were now studying art. Where were you studying art, and what type of artistic expression were you developing?
Sure. So I was, at the time I was studying photography at the University of the Arts. And so photographing a lot, lots of outdoor photo shooting. I started working after, so basically I take a postgraduate course of 1 year, and I started working right after that, mostly as a commercial photographer. I was still printing and doing things in darkroom for myself in the meantime. So I was it was quite full on. I was working a lot and trying to make the ends meet, and also trying to establish myself as a photographer.
So now let's talk about your health. You were a vibrant, athletic young person. You were pursuing now your career as an artist, initially through the photographic arts, and now you start to get sick. So talk to us about how your illness began to present to you, and how it began to interfere with your pursuit of your dreams as an artist.
Sure. So while I was in the UK, I was not sick yet. So I was doing well. I was working 100%. I was really okay. I moved to Israel, and I was still doing really good. I started my master's degree in fine art. So I broadened, I think, my horizon a bit. I started working sculpturally with different materials. And during my second year of university, that's when I got a bullseye rash on my arm. So, and I was not sick at the time. Like, I didn't feel anything. I just had this massive mark on my arm. And I started to get really ill about a year afterwards.
Okay, so let's focus on the rash. So when you saw the rash on your arm, and you were pointing to your left arm, so I'm assuming that's the arm where you saw the rash. What was your reaction when you saw the rash? And did you take pictures of it? And did you go see a doctor about it?
Yeah. So I didn't notice it right away. I was in school, and then a friend of mine noticed it because it was on the back of my arm, and she screamed like, "What's that?" Because it was really red and really, really large. And so I looked at the back of my arm, and I got really scared. I thought, okay, what is that? And I remember this scene of like all my classmates like around me looking at my arm and being like, "What's that?" And a good friend of mine, also a classmate of mine, she's from Austria. And her dad has Borrelia, has Lyme disease. So she was like, oh my God, that's Borrelia. So I had my answer very, very quickly in that sense, but then that's not how it worked out, unfortunately. But she told me, like, you need to go to the doctor right away. So I panicked a bit and made some phone calls, went straight to a doctor, skipped class, showed it to the doctor, and he told me, no, it's probably just a spider bite. Don't worry. He gave me a cream. I put a cream on it. Went home and I started researching a bit. I remember the mark on Secret Tel Aviv, which is a group on Facebook about the city, saying like, hey guys, does anyone had something like this? Is it a spider? Someone again wrote, oh, it could be Lyme disease. It looks like a bullseye rash. So I Googled some more and I got really, really scared because oh my God, Lyme disease, what is this? Wow, it can become chronic. This is horrible. So I went to another doctor the morning after, another GP. Went to her, I was like, hey, do you think this is Lyme disease? Look, it's massive. And she's like, I don't know, I'm not sure. Let me take a picture. I'm gonna send it to a colleague who will check. I asked her, can I have some doxy? Can you give me some antibiotics? And she gave me a few days. She gave me 7 days of antibiotics. And she told me, we will discuss this further. So the day after, so I start to take my doxy. The day after, she calls me and she told me, stop the doxy, it's not Lyme. Don't worry, it's nothing. She prescribed me a Borrelia antibody test, so the classic ELISA test. I go take the test, but obviously it's too early to have any results because I still have my erythema migrans on my bullseye rash on my arm. And I'm still thinking it's Lyme, so I keep taking the medications, and I go to a specialist, which is supposed to be the one who knows. It's a infectious disease doctor, supposed to be the Lyme specialist in Israel. So I go to him and I show him my arm. I show him picture from the first day. I show him like how it's evolved, and I told him like, is it Lyme? And he look at me and he laughs and he say, Flora, darling, you don't have Lyme, you got lemons. And I'm like, okay, so it's 3 doctors that are telling me it's not Lyme. my family is starting, like, I'm a very sensitive person. I was never really truly sick in my life, but I do had like some, a bit of depression, a bit of anxiety, generally like coming and going. So we thought, okay, you know what, like stop being like a hypochondriac, probably it's nothing. So I do like my 7 days of doxy anyway, and then I continue with my life. And I have, after 2-3 weeks, a second erythema migrans that comes, a second bullseye rash that comes
in the
on
same
my leg.
place now?
No, it comes on the leg. So it means that the doxy did a bit of its job, and then it was not strong enough to, I assume, I don't know.
Maybe, or maybe you were bitten again.
Maybe.
So, Flora, before we discuss the second rash, which
Sure.
we certainly have to build out, I'd like to talk about the first rash and your interaction with your doctors,
Sure.
and your interaction with the social media community in Israel.
Yeah.
So this begins with you having a friend who sees the rash tell you she believes that you have Lyme disease because her dad had Lyme disease.
Yes.
And you then want to reach out to the larger community in Tel Aviv, and you put up the picture on social media, and you're getting feedback from folks who are telling you that it looks like it's a Lyme rash. What is the sort of general culture around Lyme disease in Israel? Is it a well-known disease? Is it something that that people are generally concerned about and aware of, or is it just a sort of like very narrow sort of subset of people in the community, and you just happen to come into contact with somebody as a classmate and other people on social media?
Exactly. Yes, it's barely known, unfortunately. And later on in my story, I will tell you I went to a doctor, another infectious disease doctor, once I already have my diagnosis, and I told him, look, Lyme disease exists in Israel, like make sure you're taking notes of it. And he told me, okay, I mean, who knows? But it's barely known. They believe it does not exist here. So
okay. So were you getting that sense when you were talking to the three doctors you saw, the initial three doctors, that they didn't believe there was Lyme disease in Israel, and that's why they weren't as excited to diagnose you with Lyme as maybe they should have been, or as capable, I don't want to use the word excited, but as willing to diagnose you with Lyme?
I think the first one generally thought it was a spider bite. He did not. I don't know if he knew what Lyme disease is, seriously. And the second one, I think she done her studies in South America, so maybe she knew a bit more about it, but obviously not enough. And the third one was just, I have no words.
Right. So the first doctor didn't have the information that the subsequent doctors had, because when you had the friend tell you that they believed that you had Lyme disease because their father had Lyme disease, you said that to the second doctor, but that second doctor said she was going to send the picture to colleagues to see if she was getting feedback from colleagues. And then she also gave you a Lyme test, but of course it was immediately after the bite, and we knew the antibody test was not going to show that, but she didn't know that, right? So which doctor, by the way, gave you the cream? Was it the first doctor or the second doctor that gave you?
The first doctor.
Now, do you know if the cream that the doctor had given you was steroidal cream? Did it have steroids in it? And if it did, is that something that you shared with the other doctors, because that might have been immunosuppressive?
Good point. No, unfortunately, I don't remember anymore. Yeah, that was a years ago. No.
Okay. So let's talk about this third doctor, and I know this doctor is one that you're the least pleased with. This is the infectious disease doctor, right? Now, was this infectious disease doctor someone who held himself out or herself? I don't know what the type of doctor was, but did this doctor hold themselves out as someone who had either experience or expertise in treating Lyme disease?
Absolutely, yes. So that's how I found him as the expert in the country of Lyme disease.
Okay. So now, did that doctor treat you any differently than the second doctor? Meaning, did that doctor say, hey, there are different types of tests that you can take, and the test that you had taken, which was an antibody test, would not have come back positive or negative because it was too early on in the process? Did the doctor say, hey, we should treat this prophylactically with a longer course of antibiotics? It should be 6 weeks rather than 6 or 7 days. I mean, did you have any of those kinds of conversations with the infectious disease doctor?
The opposite. He told me to stop the doxycycline. He told me to stop the medication. And he said that because the bullseye rash was starting to fade, then it meant it was not Lyme disease.
Okay. So, yeah. So
that's insane. I'm jumping in, and I never jump in, but I'm listening, and people can't see that I'm shaking my head and making all kinds of faces before Rich, and this is just crazy to hear that it's even worse in Israel than it is in the United States. I'm sorry, Flora, that you had to go through all that.
Thank you.
Of course, Flora. Now, really, what the dissipation of the rash was showing was that the doxycycline was working.
Effective.
And the doxy, of course, was removing the symptoms. But of course, the problem, and we need to use this as a teaching moment together, right? One of the reasons why you shouldn't have doxy for only a short period of time is what it does. It does remove the symptoms, but it isn't helping your body adequately to reduce the microbe load, because the life cycle of Lyme is going to be 30 days, which is why at least iLabs recommends that you have the doxy for at least a month, but I think most practitioners are recommending 6 weeks so that you have adequate protection during the life cycle of the bacteria, right? So you even though you did take the doxy for the 7 days, it wasn't an adequate period of time. We'll learn later on, and the first signal that you have that the doxy was not adequate was that you had a second rash. Now this time on your leg.
Exactly. Yes.
So let me ask you one more question about the first rash. what were you doing just before you got the first rash? And do you believe you were bitten by a tick just before the first bullseye rash revealed itself on your arm?
So I was working on my final exhibition of the master degree. So I was traveling a lot between Tel Aviv and Jerusalem, taking lots of buses, but not really on like walking in the countryside or nothing like that. But I did live on top of a park. So, which, I mean, it's not a very green area, and you know, it's the desert here, so it's not a lot of trees, but I do believe that I got bitten in the park or just in my balcony.
Oh. Okay. So now let's pivot over to the second rash. So you now have your second rash. And now, do you believe that you were bitten a second time, or do you believe that the rash was just presenting as a result of your short course of antibiotics not effectively assisting your body in reducing the microbe load?
Yes, my intuition is the second one, that the doxycycline done a bit of the job in in keeping the situation under control, and then Borrelia took over again. So
now, did you when you discovered the second rash on your leg, did you go back to any doctors and show the second rash?
I called the doctor that told me I had lemons. And I told him, look, I have a second rash. Can I send you a picture? And he told me, no. He just brushed me off. He told me he was busy and that it was not like really, I don't know, the worst experience. And yeah, and I was really busy with my final show at the time. And I was like, you know what, probably there is a spider in the house. And I just thought probably it's nothing at that point.
So other than the two rashes during this window of your journey, did you have any other symptoms?
Not for a while, no. I was okay for.
And so you didn't have any. So Flora, you didn't have any of the traditional flu symptoms or aches or anything like that. The two rashes, and then you felt better, and you went on with your life, right? You're developing your artistic skill set. You're in the midst of your studies. You have a busy life. You want to go on with your life, and you move on with your life.
Yes, I'm graduating. I meet my partner, fall in love. I'm doing really good for about like nearly more than a year, maybe. Okay,
so you have no reason to think there's anything wrong. The rashes go away. You're living your life. You're in love. You're being enriched artistically and educationally. Life is good.
Yes, absolutely.
until it isn't, right?
Yes.
So talk to us about what happens about a year later. How do the symptoms come back?
So what happened is that I would say like maybe 6-7 months later, I started to feel a bit more tired. Like a bit more tired. I was able to work a bit less in the studio. I was always a night owl. So I really enjoyed working at night, stay in the studio until 2-3 in the morning, maybe sleeping a bit in the morning. Like all my routine suddenly felt a bit wrong. Like I couldn't stay up late anymore, although I always had in my life. So I kind of felt like around 10, I had to, okay, it's time to go home. Like I had to go and rest. So, but I didn't, I thought that was probably because I finished the studies and suddenly I was sharing a studio with like, you know, someone else. I was, you know, in a different place. Maybe I had a bit of depression. Like life as an artist is not the easiest. So the path is not so clear. There is an issue with money and how to make a living, and also galleries. It's complex in that sense. So I thought that maybe I was just a bit depressed, and that's it. And then about a few months after that, I started having knee pain. So I had pain in my knee and I was tired a bit. I had pain. And that's when I started visiting doctors.
Okay, so let's stay with this window first. So so your fatigue starts to set in, but you're in a really stressful time in your life. You're making a transition from life as a student to now life as a professional artist. And of course, we all have this image of the starving artist, which is sort of that path that you folks in the artistic community take. And we certainly those of us who have not been on that path always think that it's a glamorous path, but it doesn't sound like it is as glamorous as we imagine it to be. It sounds like it was a really painful and stressful path. And it also sounds to me that that's probably was immunosuppressive, which is why your disease begins to take off. And it first presents as fatigue, and then you start to feel pain.
Yeah. So I start to feel some pain, fatigue, and then I start to feel sick. So I start to feel very, very tired, very, very fatigued suddenly. The pain in my leg get really strong. I get inflamed lymph nodes, so they enlarge, and I don't know, I start to be a bit, anxious about what do I have? Like I probably have a really, really bad flu, but why do I have pain in my leg as well? So I was going to, in the meantime, I was going to orthopedics to have it checked. And I went to the general orthopedic, which sent me to the one specialized in back pain, who sent me to the one specialized in knee pain, who sent me to the one specialized in feet pain. So it was like from one to another, trying to figure out what was going on. And in the meantime, so I got really, really sick. And at that point, I took a blood test to see if I had mono by any chance, if I had EBV, and it came up positive. So I had mono, so I had EGM for the first time, a bit of EGG, and not EBNA. So I guess I had EB for the first time, and I had mono. So it was a really bad timing because I had exhibition coming. Finally, I had to make installation. I had to work, but I couldn't. But anyway, I was sick, and I thought, okay, I have mono. I know what the issue is. So yeah.
Let's explore that together now. So at this time, did your mind take you back to thinking about Lyme disease, because you had just a year before this very interesting experience with Lyme disease? When did you first start thinking Lyme, if you did, again, after you started to become symptomatic with your fatigue and your various you had the lymph node issues, and you had the knee and back pain?
I think Lyme was always on the back of my head since I had the bullseye rash. I always thought maybe, and then I will try to shut up that voice, because I feel, okay, you're being hypochondriac, and a bit also friends, family members, everyone was like, okay, but by now you will be really, really sick. You don't have that. So I assumed that I didn't, but I did have this voice always telling me, you have to look into Lyme.
Okay. So when you were going to your doctors, when you first went to the various orthopedists that you had gone to, were you reminding the orthopedist that you had this contact with Lyme disease? Yeah,
sometimes yes, sometimes no. Because I saw the different reaction that sometimes was coming, which was not a positive one. But I changed GP once again. So I remember showing him the bullseye rash in pictures, and he told me, no, it's nothing. Once again, I saw about like 30 doctors, and
30.
Yes, I think 20 out of those I showed the pictures, and I was told it was nothing.
One of the things we talk about all the time is body signals. And one of the things that we find with artistic folks is that you're generally more in tune with your feelings, and you're generally more in tune with, signals. So you were getting these signals that you had Lyme disease, right? You had that in the back of your mind, and your body, I like to sometimes call it the onboard diagnostic system, was saying to you, Flora, you have Lyme disease, right?
Yeah, I felt really, really ill. So after I had some mono for 2-3 months, and I started to feel a bit better after that. I still had mono, but it started to improve, and I was like, okay, it's great. It's that's how it's supposed to be. 2-3 months, 4 months, and then you're starting to see the light out of the tunnel. And then suddenly it didn't go better. It actually started to get worse again. And at that point, everyone was very confused. Like, all my family members were like, why? You're supposed to be better. So that's when things started to get tough, because although I have an incredibly supportive family, they couldn't understand. And also the pandemic was about to hit. So it was very confusing times. So I started feeling I couldn't get out of bed. So I was bedridden. From then I was bedridden for about a year. I had nightmares. I had panic attacks. I had pain everywhere. I was sweating all night long. I had air hunger. I discovered afterwards I had babesia. So yeah, it was tough. And my mom flew a couple of times from Milan to Tel Aviv to be with me. I think the second time it was really hard for her, because it was just when there was the first case of COVID in Milan. So she managed to fly anyway. She was there for a few days, but everyone thought it was at that point that it was psychological, that I was making myself feeling all those things.
It was all in your head, Flora.
Yeah, absolutely. Yes.
Okay, so let's explore a couple of things together. The first is, so your onboard diagnostic system is telling you have Lyme disease. The voice in your head is telling you have Lyme disease. But one of the things that we've learned on this podcast is that anytime we have a plan, anytime our body is giving us a plan, there are 3 different enemies that surface: external, internal, and intimate enemies. So let's first talk about the external enemies, or people who you are not close to, the experts you were working with. You had to talk to 30 different doctors, 20 of whom you showed pictures of your rash, 20 of whom you told them that you had come in contact with Lyme disease, and all of these people told you you didn't have Lyme disease, correct?
Exactly.
So
and
despite
especially one doctor, the GP that I started seeing at the time, that I thought he's American, so I thought maybe he's more literate in Lyme, and that's the one I showed. Like at the beginning of the second chapter of the journey, I showed the picture too, because I was going there quite frequently. Every couple of weeks, because I was not feeling better and I was trying to understand what's wrong. He started telling me that yes, it was all in my head, that I had to find a hobby. He referred me to a psychiatrist. He put me on Prozac and on Xanax. He was basically he said I had hysteria.
So of course, and this is really, I think, an important lesson to focus on, which is, rather than doctors partnering with you and respecting your onboard diagnostic system and saying to you, Flora, why do you feel that way? And why is your body telling you that? And exploring that together, they were essentially saying, nope, it's all in your head. Doesn't exist, right? So what was happening was these external forces were telling you to ignore your body's signal. In fact, they were telling you, you're crazy.
Yeah, I even went to the ER one night because I was feeling so horrible. And at the ER, actually, they did like an okay job, because they prescribed me lots of blood tests to see if I had like any autoimmune disease. So I think it was the first step towards something different, that was not just checking if my knee was okay and doing MRI or something like that. And I remember going to that same doctor with basically you get the prescription from the hospital, but then you have to go to your GP to have it approved so that you can do it through the health system here. And I remember him laughing and saying like, why are you taking all those tests? This is really, you're gonna just use the money of the government for nothing.
All right, so now let's talk about the intimate enemies to your plan, right? And the intimate enemies to your plan, I'm talking about the people who are closest to you, your friends and your family and the people that you love. You said they're all good people and they all love you, but they were also telling you that the body signals that you were receiving were incorrect. They were enemies to that plan as well. So talk about what it was like to share with your intimate people, your parents, your friends, your partner. What was it like to share with them how you were feeling and what you believed was wrong with you, and with all of them telling you that they didn't believe you?
I guess difficult. I don't know. They were incredibly supportive because they were listening to me all the time and they were there for me. And the amount of nights in which I cried thinking I was going to die and that everyone was going to die because I was in full-on paranoia and my partner was awake there with me, holding me. It's like, it was amazing. But yeah, I guess because of my background, because I am a sensitive person, because I'm an artist, because of, I'm a woman, and all we can put on the list of what our beliefs stand for, it was hard to, I guess, most of all because the doctor said I didn't have anything. So if science is saying, no, you don't have that, and the blood test is saying, no, you don't have that, then it has to be psychosomatic.
Although nobody really understood what I had, and my parents couldn't imagine, they didn't think this, it actually could be Lyme. They took care of me 100%, and they forward me, and they fed me, they baked me, they were really, really supportive, and even now they're my pillars and rocks, and but of course it was difficult to understand what was happening to me.
So now that's what your own mind is telling you, right? So you have the doctors telling you that there's nothing wrong with you. You have your family and the people that are close to you telling you there's nothing wrong with you. So now what is your own mind saying? Was your mind saying, hey, you're an emotional artist, hey, you're an emotional woman? I mean, is that what your own mind was saying, so that you could ignore this signal that you were getting that you had Lyme disease?
I had two sides. One side was like, okay, you've gone crazy. Like, your depression went to the stars. Like, I always battled with a bit of depression. So I felt like, wow, but this is really harsh. Like, I never felt it that way. And I hope I will never feel it again. Like, it was a dark hole. And the other side of me was like, I'm dying. Like, I'm going to die. Like, no one knows what I have. Maybe I have terminal cancer. I don't know what it is, but I don't know. Like, they will find out one day and then it will be too late because it's too much.
So now we have this sort of cascading series of voices telling you there's nothing wrong with you. And you're now starting to lose touch with your body signal telling you that you're sick, your body signal telling you have Lyme disease. So how do you continue to move forward with seeking a diagnosis if everything is telling you that you don't have Lyme disease?
So what happened afterwards is that, so the pandemic has officially hit Milan, and there is the last few flights from Tel Aviv to Milan. So I board on the last possible flights. I'm in a horrible state. I'll take 3 Xanax to be able to, and I'm a small woman, so for me that was a high dose, to be able to take that plane. So I arrived to my parents, and I can't see my partner anymore because for 6 months there is lockdowns. So I'm stuck in Milan. I'm staying at my parents because I'm not functioning. So they take care of me. And just before also the doctor office closed, because then there is no more way to go to any doctor, my psychologist, who's in Milan, he referred me to a rheumatologist that was able to see me, to meet me on the same day. So I went to her, and she visited me, and she told me that not to worry, that it was Epstein-Barr, that it just took longer. She once again denied it could be Lyme. I showed her pictures. I mean, this goes on and on and on until I think June, end of June. So in the meantime, I do another MRI of the leg and talk with another doctor who do a test of my hair to check if I had some minerals imbalance, all kind of stuff. But in June, I'm still not better. I'm just the same, like sleeping 20 hours a day, taking a shower and going back to bed because I cannot stand. And I'm a person, I mean, I'm a sculptress, I weld, I work with glass. I love life so much. I like to make things. And it was so out of character of me. Even if I do had bursts of depression, usually I always get up from it. I find my way out, and here it was just not working. And at some point I decided that I will go and take the test on my own for Borrelia again. And I did, and
Flora,
it came out positive.
Real quick, I want to jump in there because there's so many
Yes.
red flags that I've been observing while you and Rich were talking about your experience, right? And one of them is, out of nowhere, you got hit with crippling anxiety, paranoia, depression. For a small woman, you're taking a ton of Xanax just to travel. And these are unusual, out of the blue symptoms. It wasn't like you were dealing with these debilitating psychological symptoms before you got bit by the tick and before you had the Lyme rash, right? But yet your doctors are telling you it was all psychological, even though it's something that came out of the blue. That's a huge red flag, right? And I'm saying this for people listening because many of us doubt, is it still persistent Lyme, or am I crazy, or is it psychological? And it's human nature to doubt ourselves, right? But I just want to reinforce, we know our bodies best, to Rich's point, with our body signals, right? And this is out of the blue. You had a rash, you had a tick bite. I mean, everything lines up with chronic Lyme disease. And now you have mono and you develop Epstein-Barr virus. Many Lyme patients have EBV reactivated because they're immunocompromised, because their bodies are weak, and they have EBV levels off the charts forever because their body is so weak. So now they're just giving you this label of Epstein-Barr virus because you had mono, which isn't a real diagnosis. It's basically saying you're living with it for the rest of your life. But how do you feel better? You want to feel better. And as patients, we want to feel better. And as doctors, they just want to give us labels, whether we're crazy or EBV. And how do you help those types of symptoms, right? So thankfully, despite everything Rich talked to you about, all these influences coming on, telling you it's not Lyme, it's all mental health, you still did a Lyme test. And you did it out of pocket, it sounds like, and you tested positive. So where did you have to go? I mean, being in Israel now, where did you get these blood tests done? What labs did you use? And did you look for other things besides Lyme? Did you look for other tick-borne illnesses like Babesia, Anaplasma, or Ehrlichia, things like that as well?
So what happened is, in Israel, I did them through the health center here. So it's all paid by the government. I mean, by the state. Like basically, your taxes goes into like providing general medical treatment for people, and it's the same in Italy. So the first tests were done here in Tel Aviv, and then the ELISA test, which is the test I done in Milan, was done like out of pockets of my own. And it was just a general ELISA test because that's what was offered and that's what I knew as well at the time. And I was really, really lucky that it came out positive, because then after that, I wanted to do a Western blot, because when I told my GP, I told like a doctor, a Lyme literate doctor that I contacted online as well, like saying like, hey, I got a positive Borrelia test. They told me, but you need to have a Western blot, otherwise you don't have it. And so the Western blot came out negative. I didn't have bands. They didn't send me the bands. So I have no idea how much, or anyway. And then I was also told by the rheumatologist that it could be the EBV that is making it look like I have Lyme in the test results, which made no sense because it's different antibodies, but that's what I've been told.
And it's really the opposite, where Lyme will keep EBV active, not EBV triggering false Lyme symptoms, right? I mean, it's the complete backwards opposite of what your rheumatologist told you.
Absolutely. And in the meantime, I got Ogovit's book, I got Brunner books, I started reading about Lyme, I devoured the books, and I started to understand what I was what I was going through, and that I was not nuts, but it was like the paranoia and anxiety were part of, the illness. I went to my GP in Milan, finally reopened her office after being closed for months because of the pandemic. And I told her about the results, and she told me, also, like, I'm not sure. And then I show her the picture of the bullseye rash. And then finally someone said, like, oh yeah, maybe that's it. Maybe that if you have Lyme. So she gave me antibiotics for 3 weeks, I think. It was not doxy because it was summer. So she gave me, wait, I wrote it down. I think amoxicillin.
Amoxicillin that makes sense.
And she was good in the sense that she sent me to have an electrodoppler done of my heart to
Like
check that
an EKG, is that?
Yes, to check that the heart was okay. So at least she'd done that. So that was good. We knew that my heart was not being attacked. And I started with the medicine, but I knew that, like, from my readings, since I got the books, that will have done nothing, that it will have been like, the spiral will go into an egg and then back to a spiral state again. So
Flora, I'm going to stop you there again, because you hit something spot on, right? Where the spirochetes, the Lyme bacteria that are like the corkscrews that kind of go through your blood and your tissues, they change shape and they become these circular cysts, and they evade antibiotics. And then when you stop the antibiotics and you're still immune compromised, they come back to spirochetes and they keep causing damage in your body. But you knew that, not your doctors. Thank God you were doing all this research. But what I really want to ask you about is, you said you picked up Dr. Horowitz's book and Dr. Buhner's book. And those two books are very different in their approach, I feel, to looking at Lyme, right? Buhner is very natural, using herbs and natural medicine to overcome Lyme disease. And Dr. Horowitz is more Western, we'll call him, where he uses more traditional pharmaceuticals and antibiotics and dapsone and things like that to treat Lyme disease. So what was your takeaway? Were you confused when you were reading these books because they had such different approaches? And why did you choose to read such books that were so diverse, I guess is the question I have.
I think it does reflect well who I am. So, like, I do believe in, like, contemporary medicine, maybe now a bit less, but also in alternative medicine, and which is not alternative, I mean traditional, which is maybe not the right word, but more ancient medicine as well. And I don't know, I think it's the two books that spoke to me. And in the end, like, I choose Buhner. Like, I'm all into the herbal protocols, and that's how my life is now. But I think I wanted to know as well, and having also the ability to speak with doctors that we will encounter every day and understand what is what. And, like, for example, I didn't know the steroids are really bad for Lyme. Like, I knew they were bad for EBV. So I remember they wanted to give me steroids for my back pain, and I said no, fortunately. But yeah, I think to be aware of both, I think that was important for me.
Did you feel better at all when you started the amoxicillin, even though it was only 3 weeks? Was it helping a little bit, or was it really just not helping you at all, even symptomatically?
I had a massive herx for the first week, like really, really horrible. Like, so yeah, not fun. And then it got a little bit better, but not great. It took me a long time to get better. So after that, my mother found a doctor in Belgium who does microimmunotherapy. So I started for 1 year. I'd done some program with him. So it was all done on the phone, and he knew Lyme disease, and he gave me microimmunotherapy and also a medicine called Alternative Aroma, which is, I think, the equivalent of the German, what's the name? It's essential oil, basically, like to take orally.
So are you saying, I'm sorry,
Sure.
The first thing you said, is that microimmunotherapy? Was that what you said?
Yes. Yes.
Microimmunotherapy and essential
Yes.
oils, right? Is what you did
Yes.
for 1 year with a doctor out of Belgium, correct?
Exactly, yes.
What is microimmunotherapy? And I guess if you can just talk about what immunotherapy is in general, and then what microimmunotherapy is and what that looked like for you in your experience.
So from what I understand, it's a very small dosage of elements of the, for example, one of the medicine is called OSPC. So I assume that he is giving you OSPC, which is the membrane. I think it's a membrane or something like that. The protein around the Borrelia.
Yep, they call it, I think it's the OSPC, I believe stands for outer surface protein, correct? The OSPC for Lyme disease. So it's OSP and C is the type, and there's different types. So it's almost like provoking the immune response to Borrelia, right? It's basically telling your immune system, hey, wake up, there's Lyme disease, go kill it, right? Kind of thing. I think that's the approach.
Exactly. So that's what he's done. It's a bit like homeopathy in some ways, but it mixed more with tradition. I mean, or common contemporary medicine. I think it's something between the two.
But you have to start slow, right? Because if you do it too aggressively, you can have a really bad response and it hurts with the massive die-off. So talk to us about what that was like, and how did you gradually introduce the microimmunotherapy, or was it something that you had a bad reaction to at first?
No, he gave me like, I had the same amount for the whole year. And so I was taking that, and then I was taking another mix that I have here in front of me. And this was more like targeting EBV. And it had things inside like IL-10, R1, EBV viral, IL-10, DNA, ADN. I don't exactly have explanation of what it is, unfortunately. But I think it's what it, like we were saying about targeting the Borrelia and the Epstein-Barr.
So it was really twofold. You were using targeted therapy for Lyme disease, but using immune therapy that was specifically looking for the outer surface detection of the bacteria, right? And then you were using another protocol that was an antiviral rather than an antibacterial like the immune therapy. And the antiviral was going after the Epstein-Barr virus to take both of those pathogenic loads in your body and bring them down so you can see an improvement in your quality of life and an improvement in your symptoms, and allow your immune system to take back over and do what it's supposed to do. So this is sort of the idea behind, I think, natural medicine and homeopathy is you're bringing everything down, you're boosting your immune system, and then in the long term, the goal is your immune system will win the day, right? I mean, that's kind of what I'm hearing from you here.
Yeah, exactly.
So this was 1 year. Walk us through what it was like. I mean, was it sort of like in the beginning, like nothing's happening, what am I doing? Was it like, it hurts? Was it like, wow, I'm feeling much better? Was it ups and downs? Give us an idea of what this 1 year window is like for you.
Ups and downs, I guess. I was functioning a bit more. So I would say the sleeping went down to 16 hours a day, which was, already better. I had to take
better than 20, right?
Yeah, it's much better. Yes, I had a few working hours in which I could do things, but not as close as I was hoping. So it was very, very slow. I started moving a bit more, like I was going to short walk, but I was short in breathing, had short breath, and I started cycling a little bit again, but also that it was because I've always been a very active person. So as soon as I had a bit of energy, I would go and try to be my old self, but it was very tricky. And also I had a very hard time. And also until this day, I still find it hard to understand when is a herx and when is a flare. Because it takes me, I noticed that it takes my body time to herx. I'm not herxing right away. So it's always been a bit challenging to understand if to take less, if to take more, and to modify the protocols because of that.
Flora, when you did have a herx or a flare, generally we have tools in our toolbox that allow us to get short-term symptom relief while flaring or having a herx. So like I was just sharing with Rich that I was using turmeric for quite a while, haven't used turmeric CBD oil in probably 2 months. And then I was starting to get some like neck and back pain, but it was minor. And I was like, all right, no big deal. And then I'm like, I'm an idiot. And I started taking turmeric and it was gone, right? So like what tools did you have that are similar to turmeric for me that were helping you through, these symptoms that were popping up while you were herxing or while you were flaring or while you were treating, just to kind of have a better quality of life throughout the Lyme experience? Sure.
So I guess buprofenella, like most people, most Lyme patients, I think that's the first thing I learned to use. Then I would do definitely Epsom salt bath. I never had a bath, so what I do is a foot bath. And one of my symptoms that always comes when like a flare or a herx is coming is like really cold, freezing cold feet. So that always gave me a lot of relief. And what I picked early, like later on, was the Alka sanitizer.
Oh, the Alka-Seltzer Gold. Yes.
Yes, this really
That's a staple.
helps.
That's great.
Yes, really enjoy. I mean, I don't really enjoy drinking it, but it does the job.
It's an acquired taste, right?
Yeah, absolutely. I drink a lot of herbal tea, dandelion tea. I really like dandelion, always liked dandelion. It's like purifying. I got myself a sauna like a few months ago. Finally, I wanted one for a long time. It's a far infrared sauna blanket, and that really helps with the pain and sweating it all off. And it's also psychologically, it's kind of like make me take a breather and say, okay,
So the sauna is you bought a blanket infrared sauna, correct? So it kind of like wraps around your body and then it produces heat, you sweat, it helps with blood flow, it helps with getting all these toxins that are stagnant in your body flushed out through your lymphatic system and your blood. But you said it also helps you with your mental health. So are you saying if you're like in a bad place mentally, it'll actually help you have a better attitude and mood as well from the infrared sauna?
Yeah, I think so. Yes, that, and also I have another 2 tools that I've been using, which is one is an acupressure mat.
Oh, the acupressure mat, yes.
Yes, that also I really like. It's quite painful at the beginning, and then suddenly the body really relaxes, and I've been really enjoying that. And the other thing that I discovered a few months ago is some kind of like brain retraining through somatic experience. So instead of being DNRS,
yep.
Yes, it's more somatic. So it's like post-traumatic therapy, I guess. And I follow this coach, her name is Sarah Jackson, and she makes you do some kind of like exercise in which you look at different things. You learn to be in the present and to feel positive things by touching your body in certain ways. And I found that I was very skeptical at the beginning, and then I was like, wow, this is magic. Like it made my, like, from a fight or flight like to a normal state in like 5-10 minutes. It's really, really effective.
So 2 follow-up questions. The first one is the acupressure mat. Our good friend Lauren Lovejoy, who is the president and CEO of Lyme Warrior, recommends it and has it on their social media. But to your point, it kind of like, and I know this is going to sound like a wuss, but it kind of intimidates me because it does seem like it'd be a little painful to lay on it, right? So, I mean, but give us an idea of like, is it really as bad as it looks when you're laying on it? What kind of symptom relief do you get while using it?
I think for the first minute, you're like, wow, this is torture. And then it's unbelievable. The body just relaxes. I don't know how. Like I can fall and sleep on it. And I made my partner try it as well. And he also fell asleep completely. So it means it works, I think, at least for us.
That's so fascinating. I might have to try that myself. And the Berber is something we hear often too for herxes and flares. So would that help with that more so the pain and the inflammation? Is that where that helps you think?
I think so. It was never something that I would, take a dose and then feel like, wow, I'm much better. Like it never really worked that way, but I kind of trusted. So I keep taking it anyway, thinking that, one small thing plus one other thing might do the trick.
Let's go back to the nervous system and the brain rewiring, because we hear about DNRS a lot. We've heard about vital side, we've heard about Gupta, but it sounds like this is an alternative that we haven't heard before. And you kept referring to it as somatic brain rewiring. So I guess if you can first, if you have a general idea, what does the word somatic mean? And if you give us a little more detail, like what actual exercises are you doing in this brain rewiring? Are they breathing techniques? Are they mindset techniques? Are they eye movement techniques? I want to learn a little bit more about what these techniques really are and how they're helping you come out of fight or flight and get more into a balanced state of nervous system.
Sure. It's about being present, being in touch with our own body and feeling neutral or positive sensation. So there are some eye-orienting exercise, as you mentioned. So to look at things and to talk about the things that you see and how you feel about them, or other exercise in which maybe you have you're embracing yourself in a certain position. You are maybe moving your head, like it's repetitive exercise that you do for 5-10 minutes, and it's very slow movement. And for me, it's very hard to meditate. I always find it really, really challenging. And I really try, especially when I was at my sickest, I really tried and it didn't work for me. Like I couldn't stay still. I was too much in my phone. And instead, this one, I think, because I'm such a bodily person and I so much into movement, I think it works better for me, at least.
Yeah, I have to say, you remind me very much of an Italian, like Rich and I. You're talking with your hands, you're moving your body. And I'm like, I like this. We can relate. We're the same type of people here. We're moving, we're throwing our hands around. Where I love this. So just I know our listeners can't see us, but I had to share that little commentary because we're very much alike in that. So, but talk to us about. I mean, this is a 1-year period, right? You're doing all the. I mean, first of all, thank you for sharing with us all of those great things you did to manage symptoms and curb inflammation, curb pain, balance your nervous system. Those are all really powerful tools you just share with us that are low cost, no cost tools people can do, I believe, to improve their health, right? But I just want to ask you, I know I'm kind of drilling in on this, but if somebody wanted to learn more about the brain rewiring and the nervous system, because I think that's really cool and I want to learn more, right? I mean,
sure.
It's a simple tool. Why not try to see if it helps you? What kind of keywords can we Google? Because it's not like we can just go to Google and type in DNRS or GUPTA or vital side. Is it just somatic brain rewiring? Like, is there a term for this that we can go and research?
So. Let's see.
I've been Googling as we're talking, and I found who you mentioned earlier, Sarah Jackson. And I believe the website is sarahjacksoncoaching.com, where it talks all about this work you're doing with your nervous system and brain rewiring in a somatic way. Is that correct, Flora? Is that the right resource?
Yes.
Okay, great.
Yes.
I know our listeners like myself are going to go look at this and study it after this interview. So thank you for sharing that.
Pleasure.
So now I'm really curious, 1 year, right? You're doing all these things. You're doing the microimmunotherapy, you're doing essential oils, you're doing all these other great tools that you described to help your pain and help your nervous system. You're doing this great tool or this great protocol to help you with your EBV. How do you feel at the end of this 1-year window?
So I'm much improved. So I'm not bedridden anymore. I'm starting to have more of an active life, but I'm not well enough and I'm plateauing. So I kind of feel like it's time to change doctor. It was a hard thing to do because I liked the doctor that was, helping me and, like he was, really good, but I guess I needed something else. And done some research, and I found another doctor in Finland. And this, I think, thanks to the pandemic, the good side of it is that because of Zoom now, it's easier to make contact with doctors that are far away. So I started seeing this doctor, the clinic, it's called Astris, and started an herbal protocol. So I've been on that since then.
So as for time context, you were 35 when you first got pretty sick. You were 36 when you got diagnosed, and you're 38 today. So time frame, we're about a little less than a year ago now when you pivot doctors to go to this new doctor, correct?
Yes, exactly.
Okay. So, and now you're starting herbals with this doctor. So can you give us an idea as to what types of herbals are you using? Is it a protocol? Like, is it Buna's protocol? Is it Dr. Rolls' Restore Kit? Is it NutriMedics and the Cowden protocol? Or is it just a custom homeopathic remedy you're getting from this doctor?
Okay, I would say it's a modified Buna protocol. So I have Japanese knotweed, I have cat's claw, like I have the main ingredients that he suggests. But I had like things that were tailored for me. So I had turmeric because I had the arthritis symptoms. I had olive leaf, ashwagandha at night to make sure I would sleep and that my immune system will get a boost. And then I had all kind of different vitamins that I will take as well. I start my morning with NAC, drinking lemon water. So a few different medicines that she incorporated that were put just for me, I think.
And have you been on this over, for the last year or so since you started with this doctor, or have any changes? You have? Yeah, we've been changing, with the same doctor, and we've been changing things slowly. Herbally speaking, so you're bringing in new herbs, you're taking out herbs, you're kind of just modifying the protocol as time goes on to respond to your symptoms and what's going on with your body based on your body signals, right?
Yeah, exactly. And in the meantime, I done 2 blood tests. So one about a year ago when I started treatment with her, and one a month ago with Armin Lab, which is this lab that is in Germany. And so I had finally like a paper that says how much, that I had Lyme, I had Babesia, and I had Mycoplasma and EBV.
Lyme, Babesia, Mycoplasma, and EBV, you said?
Exactly, yes.
So you were dealing with all that, but all your doctors and family thought you were crazy. That's the part I come back to, right? So now here, this is where sweet revenge comes in, right? You're now having a diagnosis of these 4 things, and you're feeling much better. What are your friends and family members and former doctors saying, and how are they reacting to their previous approach with you, saying you're nuts when obviously you weren't? I mean, I'm curious to see how that went.
So, well, I think the doctors couldn't care less, so I didn't really bother to inform them. But when it came to friends and family, I think they were just really happy to hear that I had a diagnosis, that I was going to be okay. I mean, that it was a tough disease, of course, to deal with, but that we would find a way. And I think it was just like massive relief for everybody, really.
Well, I have to tell you, I know you're being humble, Flora, but what I love so much about this podcast is, you drew a very clear picture of how sick you were, right? And seeing you, and I wish sometimes this podcast can be a video podcast, because just seeing how you're glowing and your energy and your body movement, it just shows how happy and healthy you are right now, right? And the contrast of how you described of how sick you were versus how healthy you are now, it just made my day. And I know it's going to make our listeners' day, and it's going to give them hope that they can get better. And you gave us so many great tips, right? So I know we're kind of at almost the present date. Before Rich picks back up, I just have to ask you again, you gave us a ton of awesome low-cost, no-cost solutions, but is there anything else you did or that you can share with our listeners, even if it's just mindset, even if it's just something over-the-counter medicine, even if it's just something really simple, right? Breathing techniques that are low-cost, no-cost solutions to help people dealing with chronic Lyme disease and co-infections?
I would say 2 things. The first, I started writing a diary. So every morning I wake up, I have my snack, I have like half of my pills, and then I write 3 pages of journal. And so I take everything out, all my feeling, even if I don't have anything to write, I just write down, I don't have anything to write today, and it helps. And then the other thing that I done, my partner got me a ukulele, and it was very cute and very light, and I would just play it in bed. And I'm really bad with music, but it helped. I mean, also to think about other things and not to, we want to read all about Lyme and be on the forum and talk about that all the time, but also it's good to keep the mind open to other things sometimes. So, yeah.
So let's now talk, Flora, about the beautiful part of your Lyme journey, right? Matt is talking about how you're glowing and how you are full of energy again, but there was a long process that you took in order to be able to get there, and you learned a lot about yourself while you were doing that. So talk to us about what you learned about yourself and your purpose while you were going on this really challenging journey.
Sure. First, I think I learned that, I'm much better, but I'm not healed. And I think I learned that no one is healed. Like, we always have imbalance that we need to watch out for, and take care that, we sleep well and drink water, and that we take care of ourselves. And I think I'm more sure about myself, less apologetic, and in terms of like my art practice, I think it changed drastically. So I think that apart from the fact that I was working more sculpturally before, and now I'm drawing and painting a lot more because it's kinder to my body, but also it allows like somehow my imagination to be a bit wilder, I think. But
What do you mean by that? So you went from sculpting to now painting and drawing, right? And I know part of the reason why you pivoted from the more, I guess the bulk version of this, you were sick and you were, you were drawing in bed, and so you made that pivot. But now it sounds like you stayed with that different genre of your artistic, and you said it gives you more freedom. It gives, talk to us more about how how this change that was triggered by by your illness has now given you more freedom in your artistic expression.
yeah, I think so I started drawing, I reconnected to drawing actually. So I draw all my childhood and while I was a teenager. And then when I grew up in some ways, and I become an artist, I was very concerned about what art should look like and what kind of artist I wanted to be. And I disconnected to drawing, which I felt was very personal in some ways. And I think while I was at my sickest, that's the only thing that I kind of managed to do. And also I had, because of Lyme, as probably many of us, I had really, really wild dreams. So I was very connected with this part of living that it's, happening when you're asleep. And I think I saw in drawing a way to represent that and to take it into my everyday life. So I think that changed how I see my art practice a lot. So I draw all the time now, and it's more of a mixture of what I live in my daily life and also dreams and what I feel. And there is less borders, I would say, between the two. And I think I'm happier because of that, and I'm more sure about it and less apologetic about it.
So now talk to us about your part of now the Lyme community, and why you've now decided to dedicate some of your energy and your talents to doing things like this podcast and having having the social media presence that you have. Talk to us about what called you to do that and bring your artistic experience and talents to this community in the way that you are.
Sure. So I think it's important to create awareness, first of all, because we don't want other people to get sick. So as soon as I can, I bring Lyme into the conversation. I mean, not as soon as I can, but I do bring it, and I'm trying not to be my identity. I don't want it to be my only identity, but it's part of my life. So I do want to share it with others because that's who I am. I have an illness and I'm taking care of it and I'm healing and I'm better, but it might be someone else might have it one day, and if they do have the tools, they may be able to get it not as bad. So I think that's important for me.
And certainly there were many people when you were on your journey who gave you insight into what your disease was and gave some validity to the signals that you were getting. And it's because they were brave enough to share their experiences or their family's experiences with Lyme disease, which gave you some validation, right? So
yeah.
as part of our duty to serve the world and the people who we come in contact with, we do have to share our experiences so that they will be alerted to this terrible disease, and that they know that they're not alone if they ultimately do contract it, and there are resources available to support them through this. Because yeah, this is a dark journey, but there are always going to be beacons, and you've become one of the beacons in this community, which is why we love you and we were so excited to have you on this podcast.
Very kind.
So as a beacon, talk to us about what you would do if, God forbid, your partner, who's been so supportive of you during this whole, really, really difficult and dark journey, he was one of the beacons in your life. So God forbid he came into you after this podcast and he had a tick biting him on his arm. What would you recommend that he do so he wouldn't have to go on a dark Lyme disease journey?
Sure. So I guess I will take the tick off with tweezer, or if I have a kit for taking ticks off, I will do that, and I will keep the tick and have it sent over to a lab I think first thing I will put some Japanese knotweed on the bite and some clay. But I'm assuming if someone is not in contact with Lyme, does not have Japanese knotweed in the house, so I will sterilize the place of like where you've been bitten. And personally, I will take doxycycline anyway. Like a month of doxycycline compared to months of being ill is really okay. So that's what I would do personally.
Flora, we can't thank you enough for taking so much time out of your really busy and powerful artistic profession and work. We really, really enjoyed this podcast. We know the folks in our community are going to love everything that you've shared. So thank you so much for joining us on the Tick Bootcamp podcast.
Thank you. Thank you for what you're doing for the community. I listened to so many of your episodes and they really, really had me keep the morale going and also learning new tips, and really, thank you so much.
Thank you for listening to our Tick Bootcamp interview with our guest, Flora Deborah. To our listeners, we have a call to action. First, if you'd like to learn more about Flora, please check her out on Instagram at Flora Deborah, or go to our website at floradeborah.com. That's FLORADEBORAH.com. Second, if you've enjoyed this episode of our Tick Bootcamp podcast, please share it with your friends on social media. Third, Tick Bootcamp has created a Tick Bite blueprint that has been inspired by the information that has been shared with us by past podcast guests. We urge you to visit our website at tickbootcamp.com/bite to view our blueprint. Fourth, don't forget to subscribe to this podcast on Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, or Spotify to get your automatic episode updates of our Tick Bootcamp podcast. Please take a minute to leave us an honest review on your podcast platform of choice. And finally, if you'd like to search our podcast library of over 300 episodes, subscribe to our email list, or share feedback, check out our website at tickbootcamp.com. Thank you, as always, for listening.